My daughter-in-law Amanda stood in my kitchen, face flushed with anger, screaming that I had deliberately sabotaged the family dinner. Behind her, my son Michael watched silently, hands shoved in his pockets. I calmly wiped my hands on a towel, and slid the envelope across the counter toward them. "Consider this dessert," I said. Their faces when they opened that eviction notice made all those months of manipulation worth it. This is the story of how I stopped being their convenient doormat and started being their worst nightmare. Wait, before we go any further, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if you want more stories about standing up for yourself when everyone expects you to just take it. The first time I realized they saw me as nothing more than a free resource was 6 months ago during my retirement party. I'd spent 32 years as a high school English teacher, my classroom a second home filled with dog-eared novels and the eager minds of teenagers. My colleagues had organized a small gathering in the school library. Nothing extravagant, just cake and punch and reminiscing about 3 decades of service. I sat at the center table surrounded by handmade cards from my final class of seniors, my reading glasses perched on my nose as I examined each one. The librarian, Elaine, had just started a speech about my contributions to the school's literacy program when my phone buzzed. A text from Michael. "Mom, change of plans. Amanda needs you to watch Lily tonight instead of tomorrow. We're dropping her off in 20 minutes. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. My 5-year-old granddaughter Lily was a delight, but this was my retirement party, the culmination of my career, my moment. I typed back quickly. "I'm at my retirement party. Remember I mentioned it last week? Can you give me 2 hours? The response came immediately. "It's just a school thing. Amanda's mom got tickets to that new show downtown. Really important for her business contacts. Lily's already in the car." I looked up at Elaine, who was midway through a story about our battle to keep certain books on the curriculum during a contentious school board meeting years ago. My colleagues were smiling, nodding, a few wiping away tears. I felt my own eyes watering, but not from nostalgia. "Everything okay, Susan?" Elaine asked, pausing her speech. "I'm sorry," I said, standing awkwardly. "Family emergency. I have to go." I drove home with my retirement cake still in its box on the passenger seat, a bitter taste in my mouth that had nothing to do with the overly sweet frosting. When I pulled into my driveway, Michael's SUV was already there, Lily bouncing impatiently, on the front step. Amanda was checking her makeup in the car's visor mirror while Michael scrolled through his phone. "Grandma!" Lily ran to me as I stepped out of my car, her small arms wrapping around my waist. Despite everything, her enthusiasm warmed me. "There you are," Amanda called through the open car window, not bothering to get out. "We left mac and cheese in the fridge for Lily. Bedtime is 8. No TV after 7. We really appreciate this. Mom," Michael added, finally looking up from his phone. "Total lifesaver." Before I could respond, they were backing out of the driveway, Amanda already on her phone, laughing at something that clearly wasn't my interrupted retirement celebration. That night, after Lily was asleep, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the half-eaten retirement cake. 32 years of teaching literature, of analyzing character motivations and story arcs, and somehow I'd missed the plot developing in my own life. I'd become the secondary character, useful only when needed, disposable when inconvenient. Pulled out my planner, old school paper, not digital, and flipped through the past few months. A pattern emerged, clear as the red ink I'd used for decades to grade essays. Every time I'd had plans, book club, lunch with former colleagues, even a doctor's appointment, there had been an emergency childcare request. Each one framed as temporary, essential, impossible to refuse. The clock on the wall ticked softly, marking minutes of a retirement that so far looked suspiciously like unpaid work. I made myself a cup of tea and decided to wait until morning to address it. After all, I'd spent my career teaching young people about communication and conflict resolution. Surely my own son would understand. The next day, Michael picked up Lily, around noon. I'd made them lunch, homemade chicken salad sandwiches with the crusts cut off for Lily. We sat at the kitchen table, Lily chattering about the fairy tale I'd read her before bed. "Hey, Michael," I said during a lull in the conversation. "I wanted to talk to you about yesterday." He glanced up from his sandwich. "Yeah, sorry it was last minute. Amanda's mom can be pretty insistent about these things." "It was my retirement party," I said simply. He blinked. "The school thing? Wasn't that just cake with the other teachers?" "It was the formal acknowledgement of my 32-year career," I said, keeping my voice even. "Everyone was there. The principal, former students, colleagues who've been friends for decades." Michael had the decency to look embarrassed. "I didn't realize it was that big a deal. You could have said no." I took a deep breath. "I'm saying no now. I need you to give me at least 48 hours notice for childcare. I love Lily, but I have my own life too." "Of course," he said quickly. "Absolutely. Won't happen again." A week later, my doorbell rang at 7:30 a.m. on a Saturday. I was still in my robe, enjoying my first cup of coffee and the luxury of reading the newspaper in silence. Another retirement. Pleasure I was still getting used to. Through the peephole, I saw Amanda standing on my porch, Lily beside her holding a small overnight bag. I opened the door, confusion evident on my face. "Emergency at work," Amanda said, already turning to leave. "Michael told me you were available all weekend. I'll get her tomorrow night." Before I could respond, she was halfway to her car. Lily looked up at me with wide eyes, clutching her stuffed unicorn. "But," I started, then stopped myself as Lily's face fell. "Come in, sweetheart. Let's make pancakes." I watched Amanda's luxury SUV pull away, the crushing realization settling in. Michael had never had that conversation with her. Or worse, he had, and they'd simply decided my boundaries didn't matter. That evening, after Lily was asleep, I called Michael. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. I sent a text. "We need to talk about today. Call me." An hour later, my phone buzzed with a response. "Super slammed at this client dinner. We'll call tomorrow." I stared at the message, anger building in my chest. I typed back, "This isn't about babysitting. This is about respect." No response. The next morning, I took Lily to the park. As she played on the swings, I sat on a bench and opened my email. My retirement account statement had arrived, the numbers confirming what I already knew. I had enough to live comfortably, but not extravagantly. I'd planned carefully for this phase of life, travel, classes I wanted to take, maybe even volunteer work teaching literacy to adults. What I hadn't planned for was becoming an on-call, unpaid childcare provider with no say in my own schedule. When Amanda finally came to pick up Lily Sunday evening, 3 hours later than promised, she barely made eye contact. "Thanks for being flexible," she said, ushering Lily toward the car. "Things are just crazy right now with Michael's promotion and my business taking off." I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Amanda, we need to establish some boundaries. I can't be your emergency childcare with no notice." She turned, surprise evident on her face. "But you're retired now. It's not like you have anywhere to be." The dismissiveness in her voice stunned me. "I have a life, Amanda. Plans. Commitments." She gave a tight smile. "Of course you do. We all get busy. That's why family helps each other out." Her tone made it clear the conversation was over. As they drove away, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't just about the babysitting. It was about being seen, or rather, not being seen. Not as a person with value beyond my usefulness to them. I walked back inside, my house suddenly feeling too quiet, too empty. On the refrigerator, Lily had hung a drawing of the three of us, herself, Michael, and Amanda, standing in front of a house. My house. I wasn't in the picture. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my condo, the one I'd bought after selling the family home when Roger died 6 years ago. It was smaller, more manageable, perfect for one person entering. Retirement. I'd been so proud when I found it, a 2-bedroom with a small garden patio in a quiet community. Michael and Amanda had helped me move in, making comments about how it would be the perfect grandmother pad and so convenient for babysitting. At the time, I'd taken it as enthusiasm for having me nearby. Now, I wondered if it had been calculation all along. I got out of bed and went to my home office, pulling out the folder containing my mortgage documents and property papers. There, in black and white, was the truth I'd been avoiding. I owned this place outright. It was mine. Not theirs to commandeer, not theirs to assume access to. The next morning, I called my friend Diane. We'd taught in neighboring classrooms for 20 years, her mathematics a perfect complement to my literature. She'd retired 3 years earlier and had established firm boundaries with her own children from the start. "They're walking all over you, Susan," she said bluntly after I explained the situation, "and they'll keep doing it until you make them stop." "But Lily," I began, "loves her grandmother and deserves to have a relationship with you that isn't based on convenience," Diane finished. "You're not doing her any favors by letting her parents treat you this way." I sighed, knowing she was right. "So, what do I do?" "Start. By documenting everything," she said. "Every last-minute request, every canceled plan, every time they dismiss your needs. And then get yourself a good lawyer." The word lawyer made my stomach tighten. It seemed so extreme, so final. But as I looked around my living room, toys scattered across the floor from a weekend I hadn't planned for, a coffee date with Elaine I'd had to cancel, my half-finished application for a creative writing class set aside, I realized extreme might be exactly what was needed. Over the next month, I did as Diane suggested. I kept meticulous notes of every interaction, every request, every boundary crossed. I started saying no more often, not to spending time with Lily, but to the last-minute demands. The response was immediate and revealing. Amanda's texts grew increasingly passive-aggressive. "Guess Lily won't get to see her grandmother this weekend. And Michael's really disappointed you couldn't help out." Michael called less frequently, and when he did, there was a new edge to his voice, as if my asserting any boundaries at all was a betrayal of some unspoken contract. I held firm, though each interaction left me drained. I still saw Lily regularly, but on planned occasions, Sunday dinners at my place, scheduled outings to the Children's Museum, a standing Wednesday afternoon playdate after her preschool. Structure, I found, actually improved our relationship. When I knew she was coming, I could prepare special activities. When I wasn't constantly recovering from the whiplash of last-minute demands, I had more patience, more energy to be truly present with her. But something else was happening, something I hadn't anticipated. With each boundary I established, with each no I delivered calmly and without apology, Michael and Amanda's sense of entitlement seemed to grow rather than diminish. They weren't learning, they were escalating. It came to a head on a rainy Tuesday in October. I was in the middle of my writing class, the one I'd finally enrolled in after 3 postponements, when my phone buzzed with a series of urgent texts from Amanda. Lily had a slight fever, the preschool had called, but Amanda was swamped with a client presentation, and Michael was in meetings all day. Could I pick Lily up immediately? I waited until class ended to respond. "I can get her at 3:30 when my class finishes." It was only an hour away, and a low-grade fever wasn't an emergency. Amanda's response was immediate and furious. "She's sitting in the office right now. The school called an hour ago. I can't believe you're putting a hobby class over your sick granddaughter." I felt the familiar twist of guilt, followed by a wave of clarity. This wasn't about Lily's well-being. A truly urgent medical situation would have warranted an actual phone call, not texts. This was about convenience, theirs, not Lily's, and certainly not mine. "I'll be there at 3:30, I repeated. "If that doesn't work for you, perhaps Amanda's mother can help." There was a long pause before the next message came through. "Unbelievable. We'll figure it out ourselves since you clearly don't care." I put my phone away and tried to refocus on the writing instructor's final comments, but my hands were shaking. For decades, I'd prided myself on being dependable, on being the person others could count on. Now I was being cast as selfish, uncaring, all for having the audacity to finish a 2-hour class I'd paid for. When I arrived at the preschool at precisely 3:30, Lily was sitting in the director's office, looking perfectly content, coloring a picture of a dinosaur. No sign of distress, no flushed cheeks, just a little girl who might or might not have had a slight temperature elevation an hour ago. "Your son picked her up 20 minutes ago," the director informed me, surprise evident in her voice. He seemed upset. I thanked her and left, a strange mixture of relief and dread settling in my stomach. So Michael had been able to get away from his all-day meetings after all. Interesting how emergencies revealed priorities. When I got home, there was a voicemail waiting. Michael's voice was tight, controlled. "Mom, we need to talk about your priorities. Call me." I didn't call him back immediately. Instead, I made myself a cup of tea and sat on my patio, watching raindrops collect on the leaves of my potted herbs. The rosemary I'd planted when I first moved in had grown from a spindly cutting to a robust bush, strong enough now to withstand storms without breaking. I thought about what Diane had said about documentation. Opening my notebook, I added today's incident to the growing list, noting times, responses, and the revelation that Michael's unavailability had been selective. Then I called my lawyer, not Michael, not yet. Barbara Winters had been recommended by another retired teacher who'd gone through a complicated property dispute with her own family. "Family law gets messy," Barbara had told me during our first consultation. "People confuse love with ownership all the time." Now, she listened carefully as I described the latest incident and the pattern it represented. "You've been more than reasonable," she said when I finished. "But it sounds like reasonableness isn't getting through. Have you considered a more formal arrangement?" "Like what?" I asked, though I already had some idea. "A written agreement regarding childcare, when you're available, how much notice you require, even compensation if that's something you want to address." "They'd never agree to that," I said, thinking of Amanda's reaction to even the suggestion of scheduling. "They'd see it as an insult." "Then perhaps it's time to address the larger issue," Barbara said carefully. "From what you've told me, they're treating your home as an extension of their own. You mentioned they still have keys?" I nodded, forgetting she couldn't see me through the phone. "Yes, from when they helped me move in. For emergencies, they said." "And how many of these emergencies have involved them entering when you weren't home?" The question made me pause. There had been several occasions when I'd returned to find signs of their presence. Toys put away differently than I would have done. Dishes in the drying rack I didn't remember washing. Once even a document, printed from my computer. Small things, easily explained away as helpfulness, but unsettling in aggregate. "More than I'm comfortable with," I admitted. "Then I think we need to establish not just boundaries around your time, but around your space," Barbara said. "Starting with changing your locks." The suggestion sent a jolt through me. Changing locks felt so definitive, so confrontational. But wasn't that exactly what was needed? A clear, unmistakable message that my home was my own? "I'll think about it," I told her, though in truth, the decision had already crystallized in my mind. The locksmith came the next morning. He was efficient and non-judgmental, replacing both the deadbolt and doorknob with newer, more secure versions. By noon, I had new keys in my hand and a strange sense of both liberation and trepidation. I decided not to tell Michael and Amanda immediately. Part of me wanted to see how long it would take them to notice, to try to use their keys and find them useless. Another part, the teacher in me who had always believed in clear communication, knew that was petty and potentially counterproductive. In the end, I compromised. I texted Michael. "I've made some changes at home that we should discuss. Can you and Amanda come for dinner Friday, 6 p.m.? His response was cautiously neutral. "Sure, Mom. Everything okay?" "Everything is becoming okay," I replied. "See you Friday." I spent the next 2 days preparing, not just the meal, a roast chicken, with all the trimmings, Lily's favorite cookies for dessert, but my approach. Barbara had coached me on what to say, and, perhaps more importantly, what not to say. "Stay focused on facts and boundaries," she'd advised. "The moment you try to justify or defend, you've lost ground." Friday evening arrived clear and cool, the kind of autumn night that usually brought me peace. I set the table carefully. My good china, the cloth napkins I rarely used, a small vase of chrysanthemums from my garden. Everything perfect, controlled, deliberate. They arrived 10 minutes late. Lily bounded in first, running to show me a new hair clip shaped like a butterfly. Michael followed, a bottle of wine in hand. My favorite Pinot Noir, I noticed. A peace offering, perhaps. Amanda came last, her smile tight, eyes already scanning my living room as if looking for evidence of something she could criticize. Dinner started pleasantly enough. We talked about Lily's preschool projects, Michael's work, safe topics that kept the conversation flowing. I waited until we'd finished the main course before bringing up the real purpose of the evening. "I wanted to talk to you both about some changes I'm making," I began, my voice steadier than I expected. "Now that I'm retired, I'm reassessing how I want to spend my time and how I want my home to function." Michael nodded encouragingly. "That makes sense. You've earned some freedom." "I'm glad you see it that way," I said. "Because part of that means establishing clearer boundaries around my availability for childcare and my expectations regarding my privacy." The shift in the atmosphere was immediate. Amanda's posture stiffened, while Michael's encouraging smile faltered. "What exactly does that mean?" Amanda asked, her tone carefully controlled. "It means I need at least 48 hours' notice for any childcare requests, barring true emergencies. Medical situations requiring professional care, not work conflicts." I kept my voice calm, matter of fact. "It also means I've changed my locks, since the boundaries of when it's appropriate to enter my home seem to have become unclear." "You changed your locks?" Michael's voice rose in disbelief. "Why would you do that without talking to us first?" "For the same reason you enter my home without talking to me first," I replied evenly. It felt necessary. Amanda let out a sharp laugh. "This is ridiculous. We've only used our keys when we needed something for Lily or were trying to help you out." "Exactly," I said. "You use my keys when it serves your needs, not mine." That's precisely the dynamic I'm changing. Michael pushed his plate away, appetite apparently gone. "Mom, if this is about Tuesday, I already explained that the school was pressuring us to pick Lily up immediately. We were in a tough spot." "This isn't about Tuesday specifically," I said. "It's about a pattern that's developed over months. My time, my home, my autonomy. All of these have been treated as resources you're entitled to access whenever convenient, without proper notice or regard for my plans." "So you're saying you don't want to see Lily anymore?" Amanda's voice took on the wounded tone I'd come to recognize as manipulative. "You're shutting out your own granddaughter?" "No," I said firmly. "I'm saying I want to see Lily on terms that respect all of us. Planned visits, scheduled activities, not last-minute demands that treat me as an on-call service rather than a person with my own life." Michael stood up abruptly. "I can't believe we're having this conversation. After everything we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me, Michael?" The question came out sharper than I intended, but once spoken, I couldn't take it back. Since I retired, what support have you offered me that wasn't ultimately self-serving? The silence that followed was deafening. Lily, who had been quietly playing with her dessert, looked up at the sudden tension, her small face clouding with confusion. "Lily, sweetheart," I said, softening my tone. "Would you like to go play with that new puzzle we started? The one with the ocean animals?" She nodded, seemingly relieved to escape the adult atmosphere, and scampered off to the living room where the half-completed puzzle waited on the coffee table. Once she was out of earshot, Amanda leaned forward, her voice low and intense. "You know, Susan, I've always thought you were different from the other bitter, lonely older women who try to control their children because they have nothing else in their lives. I guess I was wrong. The jab was designed to hurt, to make me defensive, to knock me off balance. A year ago, it might have worked. Now I simply observed the tactic for what it was. I'm sorry you see boundary setting as bitterness," I replied. "That perspective explains a lot about our relationship." Michael, who had remained standing, placed his hands on the back of his chair, knuckles white with tension. "Mom, I think we should leave. We're all getting emotional and this isn't productive." "Actually," I said, "we haven't yet addressed everything I wanted to discuss." I reached for the folder I'd placed on the side table earlier, the one containing the documents Barbara had prepared. "Since we're already having this difficult conversation, we might as well be thorough." Michael sank back into his chair, resignation spreading across his features. Amanda remained rigidly upright, arms crossed, her half-eaten dessert pushed aside. "What else could there possibly be?" she asked, making no effort to hide her irritation. I opened the folder and removed a neatly typed document, sliding it across the table. "This is a formal written agreement regarding childcare arrangements. It outlines when I'm available to watch Lily, how much notice I require, and what constitutes a genuine emergency." Michael stared at the paper without touching it. "You drew up a contract? For family?" "I created clarity," I corrected him. "Something we've been lacking." Amanda gave a dismissive snort. "This is absurd. We're not signing anything." "That's your choice," I acknowledged. "But going forward, these are my terms regardless. I'm simply offering you the courtesy of having them in writing to avoid any misunderstandings." Michael finally picked up the document, skimming it with a deepening frown. $20 an hour for last-minute requests? You're charging us now?" "Only when you disregard the notice requirements," I said calmly. "Consider it an incentive to respect my time." Amanda's laugh was brittle. "Well, that certainly clarifies your priorities. It's all about money, isn't it?" I met her gaze steadily. "No, Amanda. It's about value. You've made it clear that you don't value my time unless there's a cost attached. So I'm attaching one." "This isn't how family works," Michael interjected, dropping the paper as if it had burned him. "And yet it's exactly how you've been treating me," I replied. "Like a service provider, but one you don't have to pay or even treat with basic professional courtesy. At least this way, the terms are transparent." Amanda stood abruptly, her chair scraping harshly against the floor. "I'm not listening to any more of this. Lily, get your things. We're leaving." Her raised voice carried to the living room, where Lily had been quietly working on her puzzle. The little girl appeared in the doorway, lower lip trembling slightly. "But I didn't finish my puzzle, Mommy." "Now, Lily," Amanda snapped, then immediately softened her tone, casting a quick glance my way as if concerned about how she appeared. "I mean, we need to go home, sweetie. We can finish the puzzle another time." I watched as Lily's shoulders slumped in disappointment. "You can leave the puzzle here, Lily," I said gently. "It will be waiting for you next time you visit." "When will that be?" she asked, her innocent question hanging in the air like an indictment. Before I could answer, Amanda jumped in. "That's up to Grandma. Apparently she's very busy these days." The passive-aggressive jab wasn't lost on me, but I refused to engage in that kind of manipulation in front of Lily. "We'll set up a special day just for us," I promised her. "Maybe we can go to that butterfly garden you've been wanting to see." Lily's face brightened momentarily, then clouded again as she glanced between the tense adults. Even at 5, she could sense the undercurrents. Michael gathered Lily's jacket and backpack while Amanda stood impatiently by the door. No one spoke as they prepared to leave, the silence heavy with unresolved tension. At the last moment, as they were stepping onto the porch, Michael turned back. "Mom, I don't know what's gotten into you lately, but this isn't you. This legalistic, cold approach. It's like you've changed completely." I met his gaze evenly. "I haven't changed, Michael. I've simply stopped accepting treatment I never should have tolerated in the first place." After they left, I cleared the table mechanically, scraping barely touched dessert into the trash, loading the dishwasher with my good china that had witnessed yet another family fracture. The house felt emptier than usual, the silence pressing in from all sides. I poured myself a small glass of the wine Michael had brought, a peace offering that had transformed into a parting gift, and sat in my reading chair by the window. Outside, the streetlights cast pools of yellow on the darkening sidewalk. A young couple walked by, hand in hand, stopping to admire my front garden with its late-blooming asters. My phone remained silent for the rest of the evening. No angry texts, no guilt-laden messages. The absence of communication was itself a message. They were regrouping, strategizing, perhaps expecting me to crack under the weight of my own conscience and reach out first with an apology. I didn't. 3 days passed with no contact from Michael or Amanda. I used the time productively, attending my writing class, meeting Diane for lunch, volunteering at the local literacy center where I helped adults prepare for their GED exams. My life was full in ways it hadn't been during those months of constant on-call availability. On the 4th day, I received a text from Michael. "Mom, can we talk? Just us?" We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our homes, neutral territory. I arrived early, selecting a quiet corner table that offered some privacy without isolation. Michael arrived 10 minutes late, looking tired and slightly disheveled, so unlike his usually polished appearance. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, sliding into the chair across from me. He'd already ordered his usual complex coffee concoction. Something with extra shots and almond milk that always made me wonder when coffee had become so complicated. "Of course," I replied, wrapping my hands around my simpler cup of Earl Grey. "How are you?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so reminiscent of his father that it momentarily caught me off guard. "Honestly? Not great. Amanda's been difficult since Friday night." I waited, letting the silence do its work. Years of teaching had taught me that most people will fill an uncomfortable silence if given enough time. "She thinks you've completely overreacted," he finally continued. "That the contract thing was a deliberate insult, and the locks were, well, she used the word, hostile." "And what do you think?" I asked. He sighed heavily. "I think something's clearly bothering you, and we should have noticed sooner. But Mom, a formal contract for babysitting? That's extreme." "Is it?" I took a measured sip of my tea. "Michael, in the 6 months since my retirement, I've canceled 8 personal commitments because of last-minute childcare requests. I've had my home entered without permission at least 5 times that I know of. I've been told repeatedly that my time has no value because I'm just retired. If I were anyone but your mother, would you consider it extreme for that person to set clear boundaries?" He had the grace to look uncomfortable. "It's different with family." "Yes," I agreed. "It should be better with family. More respectful, not less." Michael stared into his coffee. "Amanda says you're punishing us because you're lonely and bored, that you resent our busy lives." The accusation stung, not because it contained any truth, but because it revealed how fundamentally they'd misunderstood, or deliberately mischaracterized. My motives. I'm neither lonely nor bored, I said quietly. I have friends, interests, commitments that matter to me. What I resent isn't your busy life, but the assumption that my life doesn't matter at all. That's not true, he protested. Of course your life matters. Then why the shock when I act accordingly? Why the outrage when I protect my time and space? He didn't have an immediate answer for that. Instead, he changed tactics. Lily keeps asking when she can see you. She misses her grandma. I miss her, too, I said, feeling the genuine ache of that separation. But using her as emotional leverage isn't going to solve our fundamental problem. Michael looked genuinely confused. What leverage? She really does miss you. Then set up a regular visiting schedule, I suggested. Sunday afternoons, Wednesday evenings, consistent times when she knows she'll see me and I can plan accordingly. That's actually reasonable, he admitted, seeming almost surprised by the simplicity of the solution. But what about emergencies? Real ones? For genuine emergencies, medical issues, truly unavoidable crises, I'm always available. You know that. But work deadlines, social events, convenience babysitting, those need advance notice. He nodded slowly. And the locks? Those stay changed, I said firmly. My home is my sanctuary, Michael. You and Lily are always welcome when invited. But the days of treating my space as an extension of your own are over. We talked for another hour, covering ground that should have been addressed months earlier. There were moments of tension, flashes of the defensive posture he'd adopted at dinner, but overall I sensed he was at least trying to understand my perspective. As we prepared to leave, he asked the question I'd been expecting all along. What about Amanda? She's pretty adamant that you owe her an apology. I gathered my purse and coat, taking my time before responding. I'm sorry she feels hurt by my boundaries, but I'm not apologizing for having them. That's not going to go over well, he warned. I know, I said simply, but it's the truth. The next week brought a tentative new normal. Michael arranged for Lily to visit on Sunday afternoon. The visit went well. We finished the ocean puzzle, baked cookies, and read 3 chapters of Charlotte's Web, her current favorite. Amanda didn't come, sending Michael alone for both drop-off and pickup. It was a relief, honestly, allowing me to focus entirely on Lily without the undercurrent of tension. Wednesday evening was scheduled as our next visit, a plan I confirmed via text with Michael on Monday. Everything seemed to be settling into a workable rhythm, the boundaries holding, a new understanding taking shape. Then came Tuesday night. My phone rang just after 8 p.m., Michael's name flashing on the screen. Mom, I hate to ask this, he began without preamble, but is there any chance you could take Lily overnight? Amanda's mother had some kind of fall, and we need to drive up to check on her. It would just be tonight, maybe tomorrow morning. I hesitated. This seemed like exactly the kind of situation my boundaries were designed to accommodate. A genuine family emergency. Of course, I said. Bring her over whenever you're ready. Actually, he said, his voice taking on an odd quality. Amanda's already on her way with Lily. They should be there in about 10 minutes. Something in his tone set off warning bells. Michael, what aren't you telling me? There was a pause before, he answered. Amanda's mom is fine. We're having a difficult evening. Amanda and I need some space to talk, and she thought it would be better if Lily wasn't around for it. The admission hung in the air between us. Not an emergency. Not a medical crisis. A marital disagreement they'd dressed up as something more urgent. Let me be clear, I said, struggling to keep my voice level. You lied about an emergency to circumvent the very boundaries we just agreed upon 3 days ago? It wasn't exactly a lie, he said defensively. We do need to talk, and it is important that Lily not be here for it. Then you should have asked directly, I said. not manufactured a crisis involving Amanda's mother. Would you have said yes if I had? The question was revealing in its assumption. That's not the point, Michael. The point is respect, for my boundaries and for the truth. I heard him sigh heavily. Mom, can we please not make this a bigger deal than it is? Amanda's already on her way. Lily's half asleep in the car. Can we just sort this out tomorrow? And there it was. The familiar pressure to acquiesce, to prioritize their convenience over my principles, to be the flexible one, the understanding one, the one who ultimately gave in. No, I said quietly. We can't. What do you mean, no? His voice rose slightly. You just said you'd take her. That was before I knew you were lying to manipulate me, I replied. Tell Amanda to turn around. Lily can stay with you tonight. Mom, be reasonable. I am being extremely reasonable, I interrupted. In fact, I'm being remarkably calm considering the circumstances. Tell Amanda to turn around, or I won't be opening my door when she arrives. I ended the call before he could argue further, my hands shaking slightly as I set the phone down. Within seconds, it buzzed with an incoming text from Amanda. Already on your street. Don't take this out on Lily. The manipulation was so transparent it was almost laughable. Use Lily as a shield. Position me as the villain who would hurt and innocent child, rather than accommodate their deception. The old Susan might have caved, might have opened the door and swallowed her anger for Lily's sake. But I wasn't that Susan anymore. I texted back, Turn around, Amanda. I won't be part of this manipulation. Lily deserves parents who solve their problems honestly, not by using her as a pawn. Through my front window, I watched Amanda's car idle at the curb for nearly 10 minutes. My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts I didn't read and calls I didn't answer. Finally, headlights flashed as she executed a sharp U-turn and disappeared down the street, tires squealing slightly against the pavement. Only then did I allow my shoulders to drop, releasing the tension I'd been holding. I picked up my phone and scrolled through the barrage of messages, accusations of selfishness, reminders of family obligation, thinly veiled threats about limiting my access to Lily. Michael had joined in too, his texts growing increasingly, frustrated as I maintained my silence. The last message, sent just minutes ago, was from Michael. Hope you're happy. Amanda's in tears. Lily's confused, all because you couldn't be flexible one time. I set the phone down without replying. There was nothing to say that wouldn't be twisted or dismissed. Instead, I made myself a cup of chamomile tea and sat in my reading chair, watching the night settle more deeply over my quiet neighborhood. Sleep didn't come easily that night. I kept thinking about Lily, about the confusion she must be feeling, caught between warring adults. But I also recognized that giving in would have only perpetuated the cycle, teaching her that boundaries weren't real, that honesty was optional. That manipulation worked. Sometimes love meant standing firm, even when it hurt. Morning brought no messages, no calls, a silence that spoke volumes about their expectations. They had assumed I would reach out first, apologetic and conciliatory. When Michael finally called around noon, his voice was tight with barely controlled anger. Mom, we need to talk about last night. Yes, we do, I agreed calmly. Amanda's really upset. She feels completely disrespected and unwelcome in your home. I took a deep breath before responding. Michael, you and Amanda lied to me about an emergency, to manipulate me into taking Lily when it was convenient for you. That's not just disrespectful, it's dishonest. It wasn't a lie, he insisted. We really did need to talk. Then why make up a story about Amanda's mother falling? Because we knew you'd give us a hard time otherwise. His voice rose in frustration. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Mom. Everything has to be on your terms now. There's no flexibility, no understanding. Understanding goes both ways, I said. I understand you needed space to talk. I would have understood if you'd been honest. What I don't understand is why you thought deception was acceptable. Because it's easier than navigating your new rulebook, he snapped. Because sometimes life is messy and doesn't fit into your 48-hour notice requirements. I let his words hang in the air for a moment, considering my response carefully. You're right that life is messy, but our response to that messiness reveals our character. You chose deception because it was easier. I chose boundaries because they're necessary. Michael's sigh carried through the phone, heavy with exasperation. What do you want from us, Mom? An apology? I want respect, I said simply. Not just words, but actions that show you value my time, my space, and my autonomy. And how exactly are we supposed to prove that to you? Another contract? His sarcasm stung, but I refused to be baited into an emotional response. Start by being honest. No more manufactured emergencies. No more last-minute demands framed as crises. Treat me like a person whose plans matter, not a resource to be tapped whenever convenient. Fine, he said, though his tone suggested it was anything but. Is that all? For now, I replied. We can discuss the rest at our next family dinner. After a moment's hesitation, he asked, So we're still on for Sunday? I'd like that, I said, softening slightly. I miss Lily. She misses you too, he admitted. She was pretty upset last night. I felt a pang of guilt, quickly followed by resolve. I'm sorry she was caught in the middle. That wasn't fair to her. No, Michael said, surprising me with this small acknowledgement. It wasn't. We left it there, a fragile truce established. Sunday dinner was confirmed for 5 p.m. I would cook. They would bring dessert. A normal family gathering on the surface, though we both knew the undercurrents remained. The days between passed quietly. I kept busy with my writing class, volunteering, and lunch with Diane, who listened sympathetically to the latest developments. They're testing you, she observed as we shared a bottle of wine on her patio. Pushing to see if your boundaries will hold or if you'll cave under pressure. I know, I sighed, but using Lily that way, it feels so manipulative. Diane nodded. Because it is. Classic emotional leverage. Make you feel like you're hurting the child by standing your ground. But you're teaching Lily something important, even if she doesn't understand it yet. What's that? I asked. That her grandmother is a person worthy of respect, not just a convenient service provider. Diane topped off my glass. And that women don't have to sacrifice their dignity on the altar of family harmony. Sunday arrived with the kind of perfect autumn crispness that usually lifted my spirits. I spent the morning preparing. A pot. Roast with all the trimmings, Lily's favorite mashed potatoes, fresh rolls from the bakery down the street. By 4:30, the house smelled delicious. The table was set with my everyday dishes, no more good china for tense confrontations, and I'd changed into a comfortable sweater in a deep burgundy that always made me feel confident. They arrived precisely. At 5, an unusual punctuality that put me slightly on edge. Amanda entered first, her smile tight but present, a bakery box in her hands. I brought apple pie, she said, her tone carefully neutral. Store-bought, but from that place downtown you like. Thank you, I replied, accepting the peace offering, for what it was. It smells wonderful. Lily bounded in next, wrapping her arms around my waist. Grandma, I missed you so much. Daddy said we can finish Charlotte's Web today. I'd love that, I said, genuinely warming at her enthusiasm. After dinner, we'll read as many chapters as you like. Michael entered last, a bottle of wine in one hand and Lily's backpack in the other. He gave me a quick, slightly awkward hug. Smells amazing in here, Mom. Dinner started tentatively, conversation limited to safe topics. Lily's latest art project at preschool, the unseasonably warm weather, a new restaurant that had opened downtown. Lily, blissfully unaware of the adult tension, chattered happily about a butterfly she'd seen at the park, demanding my full attention with the confident entitlement of a 5-year-old. It wasn't until Lily had been excused to play with the dollhouse in the living room that Amanda finally addressed the elephant in the room. "Susan," she began, setting down her fork deliberately, "I think we should clear the air about Tuesday night." I nodded, appreciating the direct approach. "I agree." "Michael explained that you felt we'd been less than honest about our reasons for needing childcare." "Yes," I said simply. "You told me Amanda's mother had fallen when that wasn't true." Michael shifted uncomfortably. "It was my idea," he admitted. "I thought you'd be more likely to say yes if it seemed urgent." "Which proves my point about boundaries," I observed. "You assumed I'd say no to the truth, so you chose deception instead of respect." Amanda's lips thinned slightly. "We shouldn't have lied," she conceded. "But your rigid new rules don't exactly encourage honesty?" "My boundaries aren't rigid," I corrected her. "They're clear. There's a difference." "Clear, rigid, whatever you want to call it," Amanda said with a dismissive wave. "The point is, you've completely changed the dynamics of our family without any warning. For years, you've been our support system. Suddenly, you're acting like any request for help is an imposition." "Not any request," I said carefully. "Just the ones that disregard my time and autonomy." Michael leaned forward. "Mom, we get that you want more independence now that you're retired. That's reasonable. But family helps family. That's how it works." "Yes," I agreed. "Family helps family. All members of the family, not just some. When was the last time either of you asked what I needed? What would help me?" They exchanged glances, genuine confusion on their faces. "What do you need help with?" Michael asked finally. "You've always been so self-sufficient." The question, simple as it was, caught me off guard. I hadn't expected them to actually ask. "Right now? Nothing specific. But the point is that you never considered I might sometimes need support too. The assumption has always been that I exist to serve your needs, never the reverse." Amanda frowned. "That's not fair. We've helped you plenty of times." "Examples?" I prompted. "We helped you move into this place," she said immediately. "Michael, set up your Wi-Fi. I organized your kitchen." I nodded. 6 years ago, and both of those favors have been mentioned repeatedly as justification for having keys to my home ever since. Michael looked uncomfortable. "You make it sound so transactional." "That's exactly my point," I said. "It shouldn't be transactional. It should be mutual respect, mutual support, not a one-way street where my time and space are perpetually available resources while yours are carefully protected." An awkward silence fell over the table. Amanda stared at her plate while Michael fidgeted with his napkin. I decided to shift gears slightly. "I love Lily more than I can express," I said softly. "And I want to be a regular, positive presence in her life. But that doesn't mean sacrificing my own well-being or dignity in the process." "What exactly are you saying?" Amanda asked, wariness evident in her tone. "I'm saying I want us to find a new balance. One that respects everyone's needs, not just yours." Michael nodded slowly. "Okay, that sounds reasonable. What does that look like, practically speaking?" I outlined my proposal: scheduled visits with Lily twice weekly, Sunday family dinners when possible, and clear parameters around emergency assistance. As I spoke, I watched their faces carefully, noting the subtle shifts in expression, skepticism giving way to reluctant consideration. "And the financial aspect?" Amanda asked, her voice neutral. "You mentioned charging for last-minute care." "That still stands," I said firmly. "Not because I need or want your money, but because putting a value on my time seems to be the only way you recognize it has worth." Michael winced slightly. "That's harsh, Mom." "It's honest," I corrected. "Sometimes the truth is uncomfortable." After dinner, while I read with Lily in the living room, I could hear Michael and Amanda talking in low voices in the kitchen. Their tone wasn't angry, more contemplative, with occasional sighs punctuating the murmured conversation. Lily, absorbed in the adventures of Charlotte and Wilbur, seemed oblivious to the adult complications swirling around her. When they left that evening, there was a tentative truce in place. No formal agreement signed, but a verbal understanding that seemed, if not entirely satisfactory to everyone, at least workable. Lily gave me an extra tight hug at the door, extracting a promise that we would finish the book on Wednesday. "We'll be here at 5, Michael confirmed, checking his phone calendar, a small gesture that didn't go unnoticed. "I've already blocked it off." Amanda's goodbye was more reserved, but civil. "Thank you for dinner," she said. "It was delicious, as always." The next few weeks settled into a new rhythm. Michael and Amanda adhered to the schedule we'd established, arriving punctually for visits, giving proper notice when changes were needed. I sensed it was more Michael's doing than Amanda's, but I appreciated the effort regardless. Then came Thanksgiving. A holiday fraught with family expectations and traditions. In previous years, I'd hosted at my house, spending days preparing the perfect meal while accommodating everyone's preferences and schedules. This year, I decided would be different. "I've accepted an invitation to spend Thanksgiving with Diane and her family," I informed Michael during one of our scheduled calls. "They're renting a cabin up at Lake Geneva for the long weekend." The silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. "But we always do Thanksgiving at your place," he finally said. "And I've always done all the cooking, cleaning, and organizing," I pointed out. "This year, I'd like to be a guest instead of a host." "What are we supposed to do?" The question held a note of genuine bewilderment, as if the concept of arranging their own holiday was entirely foreign. "Whatever you'd like," I said. "Host at your house, go to a restaurant, visit Amanda's family. The options are limitless." Michael's sigh carried through the phone. "Amanda's not going to be happy about this." Sorry to hear that," I replied, genuinely meaning it. "But my plans are set." The fallout was immediate and intense. Amanda called that evening, her voice tight with controlled anger. "So you're abandoning family traditions now? Just like that?" "I'm not abandoning anything," I said calmly. "I'm simply making different plans this year. Lily will be devastated. She's already talking about helping you make pumpkin pie." The attempt at emotional manipulation was so transparent, I almost laughed. "Lily is welcome to help me make pie the weekend. Before Thanksgiving, we can have our own special celebration." "That's not the same, and you know it," Amanda snapped. "Thanksgiving is about family." "Yes," I agreed. "And Diane is like family to me. I'm looking forward to spending the holiday with her." "I can't believe you're being this selfish," Amanda said, her voice rising. "After everything we've done to accommodate your new boundaries, this is how you repay us? By ruining our holidays?" I took a deep breath, refusing to be baited into an emotional response. "Amanda, my holiday plans aren't about punishing you. They're about what I want to do this year. Just as your plans should be about what you want." "What I want is a normal family Thanksgiving," she exclaimed. "With you cooking your famous stuffing and Lily helping with the cranberry sauce and everything the way it's supposed to be." The entitlement in her voice was stunning. "What you want," I said carefully, "is for me to maintain traditions that serve you, regardless of what I might prefer. That's not happening this year." After more protests and accusations, Amanda finally hung up abruptly. Michael texted shortly after. "She's really upset. Can we talk about this?" "There's nothing to discuss," I replied. "My plans are firm. You're welcome to come for dinner the Saturday before Thanksgiving if you'd like." The weekend before the holiday, they did come for my offered alternative celebration, a full turkey dinner with all the traditional sides, just days earlier than the actual holiday. Lily was thrilled with the concept of 2 Thanksgivings, throwing herself into helping with enthusiasm. Amanda remained cool throughout the evening, her participation minimal and grudging. As they were leaving, Michael hung back slightly. I still wish you'd reconsider about Thursday, he said quietly. Amanda's parents are coming now, and you know how her mother can be. I'm sorry that's stressful, I said sincerely, but my plans haven't changed. He nodded, resignation evident in his expression. Worth a shot, he murmured, then followed his family to the car. The Thanksgiving weekend with Diane and her family was revelatory. The cabin overlooked the lake, its large windows framing the late autumn landscape in postcard perfection. Diane's daughter had done most of the cooking, her son-in-law handled the dishes, and I was treated as an honored guest rather than unpaid caterer. We played board games, took long walks along the shore, and stayed up late drinking wine by the fireplace. Not once did I feel like my presence was being measured in terms of usefulness. Not once did I have to remind anyone of my boundaries or assert my needs. I existed simply as myself, not as a grandmother, not as a support system, just as Susan. When I returned home Sunday evening, refreshed and content, I found a small package on my doorstep. Inside was a handmade card from Lily, covered in glitter and wobbly handwriting. I miss you, Grandma. Mommy was mad, but Daddy says you deserve fun too. Beneath it was a framed photo of Lily and me from our early Thanksgiving, both of us laughing, as we mixed cranberry sauce, red juice splattered across our matching aprons. A small note in Michael's handwriting was tucked into the corner of the frame. She had a great time. Maybe next year we can start some new traditions together. I placed the frame on my mantel, a small bridge across the divide we'd created. Not quite reconciliation, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of genuine understanding. The real test came 3 weeks later, on a Friday evening in mid-December. I was halfway through preparing dinner when my phone rang, Amanda's name flashing on the screen. I answered with some trepidation, unsure what to expect. Susan, she began, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. I know this is last minute, but I have a situation. I waited, saying nothing. Michael's caught a stomach bug. He's been throwing up all afternoon. I have my company's holiday gala tonight. I'm up for an award, and my presentation is part of the evening program. I can't miss it. Still, I remained silent, letting her continue. I know it's short notice, she pressed on. Less than your 48-hour requirement, but this is actually an emergency. I've tried everyone else, but with the holiday season... What time do you need me there? I asked finally. There was a pause, as if she'd expected more resistance. By 6, if possible. The event starts at 7. I checked my watch, just after 5. I can be there by 6, I confirmed. But Amanda? Yes? Her voice held a wary note. Thank you for being honest about the situation instead of exaggerating or manipulating. I appreciate that. Another pause. Longer this time. I'm trying, she said finally, the admission clearly difficult for her. After Thanksgiving, Michael and I had some long talks. He pointed out some patterns in how I've been treating you. I see, I said, genuinely surprised by this development. Don't get me wrong, she added quickly, her typical defensiveness reasserting itself. I still think some of your boundaries are excessive, but I'm trying to respect them anyway. It wasn't a full acknowledgement, not even close to an apology, but it was movement in the right direction. I'll see you at 6, I said. That evening, as I sat with Lily watching her favorite holiday movie for the 3rd time, her choice, not mine, I reflected on the subtle shift in our family dynamic. Not healed, not completely transformed, but changing, incrementally. Small steps toward mutual respect. Michael texted from his sickbed. Thank you for coming through tonight. I know it wasn't easy with how things have been. I smiled slightly at the understatement. Family helps family, I replied. When it's mutual. His response came quickly. Working on that part. Still learning. The learning process continued into the holiday season. There were missteps, an assumption here, a boundary pushed there, but also genuine effort, particularly from Michael. Amanda remained more resistant, her compliance more strategic than sincere, but even she seemed to be adapting to the new normal, if grudgingly. Christmas approached with its own set of expectations and traditions. This year, instead of automatically hosting as I always had, I initiated a conversation early. "I'd like to discuss our holiday plans," I said during a Sunday dinner in early December. "I'm happy to host Christmas Eve dinner here, but I'd like to accept Diane's invitation for Christmas Day brunch." Michael nodded thoughtfully. "That seems fair. We could do Christmas afternoon and dinner at our place, if you'd like to join after your brunch." Amanda looked less convinced, but offered no immediate objection. Progress, however small, as I prepared for Christmas Eve, setting the table with my holiday linens and polishing the silver serving dishes that had been wedding gifts decades ago. I felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. The boundaries I'd established, painful as they had been to enforce, had gradually shifted our family dynamic from one of entitled expectation to something approaching mutual consideration. There would be more challenges ahead, more moments of regression and resistance. Amanda's fundamental attitude hadn't truly changed. She'd simply learned to work within constraints she couldn't remove. Michael was evolving more genuinely, though years of patterns wouldn't disappear overnight. And Lily, innocent witness to it all, was perhaps learning the most important lesson: that love and respect were inseparable, not opposing forces. The doorbell rang promptly at 5, and I heard Lily's excited voice calling through the door. "Grandma, we brought extra cookies, and Mommy let me wrap your present all by myself." I opened the door to my family, complicated, flawed, evolving, and welcomed them into my home. My home with my boundaries, my dignity intact. The journey had been harder than I'd imagined when I first began setting limits. But standing in my doorway, I knew with absolute certainty that I'd found my way back to myself. Christmas Eve dinner proceeded with surprising ease. Lily dominated, the conversation with her boundless enthusiasm for all things holiday-related, her detailed explanation of reindeer flight mechanics, her careful calculations of Santa's cookie consumption, her theories about elf employment practices. Michael and Amanda were more reserved but pleasant, maintaining the delicate truce we'd established. After Lily had opened her Christmas Eve gift from me, a set of watercolor paints and a proper artist's sketchbook, she sprawled on the living room floor, immediately testing the colors while the adults lingered at the table over coffee and dessert. "Your Pfeffernüsse are amazing as always, Mom," Michael said, reaching for another of the spiced holiday cookies. "I've never been able to get mine to turn out right." "It's all in how you mix the dough," I replied. "I could show you sometime, if you'd like." He smiled, a genuine warmth in his expression. "I'd really like that." Amanda, who had been quietly nursing her coffee, set down her cup with deliberate care. "Susan, I've been meaning to ask you something." The slight formality in her tone put me on alert. "What's that?" "Would you be willing to watch Lily overnight on New Year's Eve? We've been invited to a party at Michael's boss's house. It could be important for his career." Her words came out rehearsed, as if she'd been practicing this request. I appreciated the advance notice, still a week away, and the straightforward nature of the ask. No manufactured emergency, no emotional manipulation, just a simple request with enough time for me to consider it on my own terms. "I'd be happy to," I said. "What time would you drop her off?" The momentary surprise on Amanda's face revealed she'd expected more resistance. "Around 7, if that works. The party starts at 8. "That's fine," I confirmed. "We'll have our own little celebration here." Amanda nodded, her posture relaxing slightly. "Thank you. She'll be excited. She's been talking about having a sleepover party with you." Michael caught my eye across the table, a quick glance of appreciation. These small moments of normalcy, of courteous requests and simple gratitude, felt like stepping stones across the chasm that had formed in our family. Not a complete bridge yet, but the beginnings of a path. Later, as they were preparing to leave, Michael helped me clear the dessert plates while Amanda got Lily bundled up for the cold December night. "I wanted to thank you," he said quietly. His voice pitched below Amanda's detailed instructions to Lily about mittens and scarf arrangement. "Not just for tonight, but for standing your ground these past few months. It hasn't been easy for any of us, but I think it was necessary." Paused, dishcloth in hand, genuinely surprised by this acknowledgement. "What brought this on?" He shrugged, looking slightly embarrassed. "Perspective, I guess. Amanda and I have been seeing a counselor. Not just because of the situation with you, but it's come up." "I see," I said carefully, not wanting to pry, but interested in this development. "The counselor pointed out some patterns in how we've been treating you," he continued, rinsing a dessert fork, "and some larger issues about entitlement and boundaries that affect our marriage, too." I nodded, sensing he needed to say this without interruption. "Anyway," he said, placing the last clean fork in the drying rack, "I just wanted you to know that I get it now. What you were trying to do with all the boundaries and the contract and everything, it wasn't about rejecting us. It was about reclaiming yourself." "Yes," I said simply. "That's exactly what it was about. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand." The apology hung in the air between us, honest and unadorned. Not dramatic, not performative, just sincere. Before I could respond, Lily came bounding into the kitchen, mittened hands outstretched. "Daddy, look how Mommy made my mittens match my hat," she exclaimed, twirling to display her coordinated winter wear. The moment passed, but something had shifted, a subtle realignment in our relationship that felt more significant than any formal agreement we'd discussed. Christmas Day unfolded as planned, brunch with Diane and her family, followed by a late afternoon visit to Michael and Amanda's home. Their house was beautifully decorated, though with a slightly chaotic energy that spoke of Lily's enthusiastic involvement in the process. Paper snowflakes hung at uneven intervals across the front windows, and the tree featured a distinct concentration of ornaments at child height. Amanda seemed more relaxed on her home territory, less defensive than she'd been at my house. She'd prepared an impressive spread: ham, scalloped potatoes, green bean casserole, rolls, all arranged on the dining table with evident pride. "Everything looks wonderful," I said sincerely as she handed me a glass of wine. "Thanks," she replied. "I used your recipe for the rolls, actually. Michael insisted they wouldn't be Christmas dinner without them." The small acknowledgement, giving credit rather than simply appropriating, didn't go unnoticed. Another tiny step forward. The evening passed pleasantly, with Lily orchestrating much of the entertainment, insisting we watch her new favorite, holiday cartoon, demonstrating her proficiency with the art supplies I'd given her, detailing her haul of presents with the meticulous inventory skills of a born accountant. As I prepared to leave around 8, pleading the early start I'd had, with Diane's brunch, Michael walked me to the door. "This was nice," he said, helping me with my coat. "Almost normal." I smiled at his choice of words. "A new normal, maybe." "Yeah," he agreed. "A better one, I think." New Year's Eve arrived with a light dusting of snow, just enough to make the world look freshly polished. Lily arrived at 7 as planned, a small backpack stuffed with pajamas, her favorite stuffed unicorn, and no fewer than 3 storybooks she insisted were essential bedtime reading. "Grandma, I brought sparkling juice so we can toast," she announced, as she burst through the door, holding up a plastic bottle of apple juice with obvious pride. "Mommy says we can celebrate midnight even though it will really only be 9 o'clock. I smiled at her enthusiasm. "That sounds perfect. I made your favorite mac and cheese for dinner, and I thought we could build a blanket fort in the living room to watch the early fireworks." Her eyes widened. "A real fort? With pillows and everything?" "With pillows and everything," I confirmed. "And popcorn inside the fort, if you're careful." She turned to her parents, who were still standing in the doorway. "Did you hear that? A fort. With popcorn. Michael laughed. Sounds like you're in for a wild night, Mom. We'll manage, I assured him. You two have fun at your party. Amanda hesitated, then stepped forward to hand me a small folded piece of paper. Emergency numbers, she explained. My cell, Michael's cell, the location of the party, and my mother's number just in case. I accepted the paper with a nod. Thank you. Very thorough. And her bedtime medicine is in the front pocket of her backpack, she continued. Just 1 teaspoon for her allergies. She already had her bath before we came. Got it, I said, resisting, the urge to point out that I'd managed Lily's care dozens of times before. This was progress, organized communication rather than haphazard assumptions, even if it came with Amanda's characteristic need for control. After they left, Lily and I embarked on our evening's adventures. We constructed an elaborate fort, using every spare blanket and pillow in the house, strategically anchored with books and cushions to create a surprisingly stable structure. Inside, we arranged her sleeping bag, a mountain of pillows, and a small folding table for our party. Snacks. This is the best fort ever, Lily declared as we crawled inside with our plates of mac and cheese. Can we eat in here? Mommy never lets me eat in forts. Special occasion rules, I said, handing her a napkin. Just be careful with the cheese. Sauce. We dined in our fabric castle, Lily chattering about her kindergarten friends, her favorite TV shows, and her detailed plans for what she wanted to do when she turned 6, still months away, but apparently requiring extensive advance. Preparation. At precisely 8:45, we turned on the television to watch the East Coast New Year's celebration. Scheduled to culminate at our 9 p.m., Lily insisted on changing into her party outfit, a sparkly purple skirt over leggings and a t-shirt with a sequined star, for the occasion. We need party hats, she announced with sudden urgency. It's not really New Year's without hats. Lacking proper party hats, we improvised with construction paper and aluminum foil, creating rather spectacular if structurally unsound headgear that Lily declared even better than store ones. We completed our preparations by pouring apple juice into my least expensive wine glasses, a concession to festivity that clearly thrilled my granddaughter. As the countdown began on television, Lily bounced with excitement, her handmade hat, listing dangerously to one side. 10, 9, 8, she shouted along with the TV crowd, juice sloshing perilously close to the rim of her glass. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year! We clinked glasses carefully, and Lily took a ceremonial sip of her juice before launching herself at me for a hug that nearly toppled both of us into the fort wall. This is the best New Year's ever, she declared, her face alight with genuine joy. After the celebration, we read all 3 of her essential books, negotiated down to just one more story, and finally settled into our respective sleeping arrangements. Lily in her sleeping bag inside the fort, me on the nearby couch where I could hear her if she needed anything during the night. I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, I was startled awake by the sound of the front door opening. Disoriented, I checked my watch. 11:45 p.m., over an hour before Michael and Amanda were expected back. Lily was still sound asleep in her fort, undisturbed by the noise. I rose quietly and made my way to the entryway, where I found Michael helping a clearly intoxicated Amanda remove her coat. "You're back early," I observed, keeping my voice low to avoid waking Lily. Michael looked up, his expression a mixture of embarrassment and frustration. "Yeah, we decided to cut the evening short." Amanda swayed slightly, bracing herself against the wall. "Party was boring," she announced, her voice too loud for the quiet house. "Bunch of corporate kiss-ups pretending to like each other." "Amanda," Michael warned gently, "keep it down. Lily's sleeping." She made an exaggerated shushing gesture, nearly losing her balance in the process. "Sorry," she stage-whispered. "Didn't mean to wake the princess." I assessed the situation quickly. Would you like some coffee before you head home? Or water? Michael shot me a grateful look. Coffee would be great if it's not too much trouble. I led them to the kitchen, where Amanda dropped heavily into a chair while Michael helped me prepare the coffee. She was far from the most intoxicated person I'd ever seen. Coherent but uninhibited, that particular stage of inebriation where filters disappear but basic functions remain intact. "Did Lily give you any trouble?" Michael asked as we waited. "For the coffee to brew?" "Not at all," I assured him. "We had a wonderful time. Built a fort, watched the fireworks, celebrated East Coast midnight." Amanda laughed, a sound slightly too sharp. "Of course she was perfect for you. Everyone's always perfect for Grandma Susan." Michael tensed beside me. "Amanda, don't start." "Start what?" she challenged, her inhibitions clearly lowered by alcohol. "I'm just saying what we both know. Lily's always an angel for her grandmother, but at home. Tantrums, negotiations, bedtime battles." I kept my voice neutral. Children often behave differently in different environments. It's normal. "Or maybe," Amanda continued as if I hadn't spoken, "it's because Grandma has no actual rules. Grandma lets her eat in blanket forts and stay up late and never says no to anything." "That's enough," Michael said firmly. "Mom's done us a favor. Tonight. Let's not ruin it." Amanda's focus shifted to him, her expression hardening. "Oh, I'm ruining things now? Like I ruined your chances with the VP by not laughing at his stupid jokes? Or like I ruined the perfect family Christmas by suggesting we might want to start our own tradition someday?" I moved to pour the coffee, keeping myself busy while trying to give them some semblance of privacy in the increasingly uncomfortable conversation. "We can discuss this at home," Michael said, his patience clearly strained. "This isn't the time or place." "It never is," Amanda retorted. "There's never a right time to point out that your mother has more influence over our family decisions than I do." I set a mug of coffee in front of her, determined to de-escalate the situation. "Amanda, you've had a long evening. Drink this, and then you both should head home. Lily's fine here. She can stay the night as planned, and you can pick her up in the morning when everyone's had some rest." She looked up at me, her gaze suddenly focused and surprisingly lucid despite her intoxication. "See? There you go again. Solving problems, managing situations, being the perfect, reasonable Susan who never loses her cool, never says what she's really thinking." "I'm trying to help," I said evenly. "You're trying to control," she corrected, wrapping her hands around the coffee mug without drinking it. "Just like you've been doing with all your boundaries and rules and contracts. It's never been about independence. It's about power." Michael moved to intervene. "Amanda, that's completely unfair, is it?" she challenged. "Ever since Susan decided we were taking advantage of her, everything's been on her terms. When we see Lily, how we interact, what holidays look like. She turned our whole family dynamic upside down because she didn't like feeling disrespected, and we all just went along with it." The accusation hung in the air, sharp and unexpected. I took a measured breath before responding, determined not to be provoked into an emotional reaction that would only confirm her perspective. "You're entitled to your opinion," I said carefully, "but I think you're confusing boundaries with control. I've never dictated how you parent Lily or run your household. I've only established parameters around my own time and space." Amanda gave a dismissive laugh. "Semantics. You created a crisis where there wasn't one. We were a normal family with normal grandparent childcare arrangements, and you turned it into this whole power struggle." "It became a struggle," I acknowledged, "only when my reasonable requests for notice and consideration were ignored." Michael placed a hand on Amanda's shoulder. "Let's drop this for tonight, okay? Mom's right. We should head home, get some sleep, talk about this when you're feeling more yourself." Amanda shrugged off his touch. "This is myself, Michael. This is me finally saying what I've been thinking for months while you've been falling all over yourself to accommodate your mother's midlife crisis or whatever this is." I felt my composure starting to fray at the edges but maintained my even tone. I think we've heard enough for one evening. Lily's asleep, and I'd prefer she stays that way. You're welcome to pick her up in the morning, or I can drop her off. Either way, I think this conversation should continue another time. Amanda stood, wavering slightly. Of course. Susan has spoken, so the discussion is over. Just like always. Michael moved to steady her. We're leaving. I'm sorry about this, Mom. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak further without saying something I might regret. As they made their way to the door, Amanda leaning heavily on Michael's arm, I heard her mutter, "She acts like she's doing us all some big favor by allowing us into her perfect little life." After the door closed behind them, I stood in the quiet kitchen, hands gripping the counter edge, trying to process what had just happened. The evening had veered from peaceful celebration to uncomfortable confrontation in a matter of minutes. I checked on Lily, who had somehow slept through the entire exchange, curled in her sleeping bag with her unicorn clutched tightly to her chest. Her face in sleep was so peaceful, so untouched by the adult complications swirling around her. Sleep eluded me for much of the night. I kept replaying Amanda's words, searching for the kernel of truth that made them sting. Was she right? Had my quest for boundaries become its own form of control? Had I overreacted to what was, as she suggested, simply a normal family dynamic? By morning, I'd reached no definitive conclusions, but I'd regained my equilibrium. Whatever truth might exist, in Amanda's drunken accusations, the core of my position remained valid. I deserved respect. I deserved consideration. I deserved to be seen as a person, not just a convenience. When Michael arrived alone to pick up Lily around 10, his expression was a mixture of exhaustion and embarrassment. About last night, he began as Lily gathered her things. We don't need to discuss it right now, I said gently, nodding toward Lily, who was happily demonstrating to her unicorn how to properly pack a backpack. He nodded gratefully. Later then. But I want you to know, Amanda was way out of line. What she said doesn't reflect how I feel. I studied his face, noting the sincerity in his eyes. Thank you for saying that. Is she feeling all right this morning? Physically? No. Emotionally? Also no. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration. She remembers everything she said and is mortified, but also still kind of standing by it, if that makes sense. It does, I acknowledged. Alcohol doesn't usually create feelings out of nothing. It just removes the filters. Yeah, he sighed. We have some things to work through clearly, both between us and with all this. He gestured vaguely, encompassing the complicated family dynamics we'd been navigating. Take the time you need, I said. Lily and I are fine. Our schedule doesn't have to change while you two sort things out. He looked relieved. I appreciate that, more than you know. After they left, the house felt strangely empty. I dismantled the blanket fort slowly, folding each blanket with care, remembering Lily's delight in our simple celebration. Whatever complications existed with Michael and Amanda, my relationship with my granddaughter remained pure and uncomplicated. The first weeks of January passed in a subdued rhythm. Michael brought Lily for her regular visits, but Amanda was conspicuously absent, begging off with vague excuses about work deadlines or previous commitments. I didn't press the issue, giving her the space to process her feelings without forcing a confrontation neither of us was ready for. During one Sunday visit, while Lily was absorbed in a new puzzle I'd bought her, Michael and I finally had the key conversation we'd been postponing. Amanda and I have been talking a lot, he began, his voice low to avoid Lily's attention. About that night, about everything that led up to it, about how we've been treating you. I waited, letting him find his way through what was clearly a difficult admission. She's still struggling with some of it, he continued. She feels like the changes you've made came out of nowhere, that they're punitive somehow. But she's also starting to see that we, both of us, took your availability for granted. That's progress, I observed. He nodded. She's suggested something, and I think it might actually be a good idea. A fresh start, kind of. What did she have in mind? I asked, curious despite my wariness. Family dinner at our house. Just the four of us. No holiday pressure, no specific agenda, just reconnecting. I considered the proposal carefully. And Amanda is on board with this? Genuinely? It was her idea, he confirmed. She's not great at apologies, I've noticed, I interjected dryly. He smiled slightly. Yeah, but this is her way of extending an olive branch, if you're willing. I thought about Amanda's words on New Year's Eve, the raw emotion behind them. Beyond the alcohol and the accusatory tone, there had been genuine hurt there, a feeling of displacement, perhaps even insecurity about her role in our family structure. My boundaries had been necessary, but I could acknowledge that from her perspective, the shift had indeed been abrupt and destabilizing. I'd like that, I said finally. A fresh start sounds good. The dinner was scheduled for the following Friday evening. As the day approached, I found myself both hopeful and apprehensive. Would this truly be a new beginning, or would it devolve into another confrontation? I arrived at their house precisely on time, a bottle of wine in hand, not the, peace offering it might once have been, but a normal gift for a dinner host. Lily greeted me with her usual enthusiasm, dragging me immediately to see her latest art project displayed prominently on the refrigerator. Amanda appeared from the kitchen, an apron tied over her casual dress, her smile tentative but present. "Thanks for coming," she said, accepting the wine with a nod of appreciation. "Dinner's almost ready." The evening progressed with a cautious cordiality. We talked about safe topics, Lily's school projects, Michael's work, a new restaurant that had opened downtown. Amanda had prepared a lovely meal, clearly putting effort into the occasion. Lily, as always, provided natural breaks in the adult conversation with her boundless energy and random observations. As we finished dessert, a surprisingly good chocolate cake that Amanda admitted she'd bought rather than attempted to bake, Lily asked to be excused to play with her toys in the living room. Once she was safely out of earshot, Amanda set down her fork and looked directly at me. "I owe you an apology for New Year's Eve," she said without preamble. What I said was inappropriate and unfair, especially given the circumstances. The directness surprised me. "Thank you," I said simply. "I appreciate that." She took a deep breath. "I still don't agree with everything you've done these past few months. The contracts, the locks. It felt extreme to me. It still does." I nodded, acknowledging her perspective without immediately defending my actions. "But," she continued, "I've been thinking about why it bothered me so much. And part of it is because I think I saw your boundaries as a rejection of us, of me. Like you were saying we weren't good enough to be trusted with keys or to be part of your daily life anymore." The admission seemed to cost her something, a vulnerability I hadn't often seen Amanda display. "That wasn't my intention," I said carefully. "My boundaries weren't about pushing you away. They were about creating space for myself after years of being constantly available." She nodded. "Michael helped me see that. And our counselor pointed out that I tend to personalize things that aren't always about me." Michael reached over to squeeze her hand supportively. "We both have some work to do on that front." "Anyway," Amanda continued, "I wanted to say that while I might not understand or agree with all of your choices, I am trying to respect them, and I hope we can find a way forward that works for everyone." It wasn't a complete concession, not a full acknowledgement of the legitimacy of my perspective, but it was honest, and it opened a door to genuine dialogue rather than defensive positioning. "I'd like that too," I said sincerely. "And for what it's worth, I recognize that the changes I made affected all of you. That wasn't my intention, but it was the reality. As we sat there in that moment of honest acknowledgement, I realized something profound. Reclaiming my dignity hadn't meant losing my family. It had transformed us all. The following week, I found a letter in my mailbox. Inside was a new house key attached to a handmade keychain clearly decorated by Lily, alongside a note. "For real emergencies only, we promise." It wasn't about the key itself, but the respect it represented. That night, as I added it to my keyring, I thought about how standing firm had rippled outward. Michael was learning to set his own boundaries with Amanda. Amanda was slowly recognizing that respect strengthened rather than weakened relationships. And Lily was watching it all, absorbing the quiet lesson that women don't diminish themselves to keep the peace. Sometimes the most important dinner you'll ever serve is the one where you finally put yourself on the menu. If my story resonated with you, remember, your time matters, your boundaries matter, and most importantly, you matter. The people who truly love you will adjust, and those who don't, well, they just might find themselves served an eviction notice for dessert. Drop a comment below about a time you had to set a difficult boundary, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about standing your ground when the world expects you to back down. New videos every Wednesday.